may thy servant Camilla, who wears this crown, be filled by thine abundant grace. Music for years, Queen Camilla's private rooms have been surrounded by mystery. But nothing could have prepared the royal household for what happened when a royal guard was ordered to force open her wardrobe. Hidden away, rapidine layers of secrecy lay an artifact no one expected to see again, the late Queen Elizabeth's coronation robe. This shocking discovery has left historians, royal watchers, and even family members stunned. So, why was it hidden in Camilla's possession? And what does it mean for the monarchy's future? The velvet secret of Clarence House. The chandeliers inside Clarence House glowed faintly, their light settling like mist over polished marble and silanthal ways. It was well past dusk when Elsie Grafton, a junior chamber attendant, barely 3 years into her royal service, realized she'd forgotten to finish her wardrobe check. Tomorrow's event was important, a high-profile alignment where Queen Camilla, ways expected to embody heritage and dignity, bore the world's cameras. The press team had requested something with symbolism visually commanding, they'd said. Something that whispered ophistry. Elsie moved methodically, clipboard in hand, cross-checking every item for the morning. Sapphire silk daywear accounted for. The state brocade shawl perfectly steamed. Beige gloves for the garden greeting folded with care. She had a lot of ingredients that Charles really fell in love with, and he never really fell out of love with her. So it was a familiar rhythm, one she could perform almost blindfolded. She sighed, ready to call it a night until her pen slipped from her grasp, rolling across parquet floor and disappearing behind dressing screen. She knelt, muttering under her breath as she reached into the dim gap between through and an old campaign trunk. That's when her fingers brushed some next thick fabric, rough with age, and sealed within a garment begeavier than anything she'd handled bare. She hesitated. Every instinct told her not to pry. Yet the object's placement shoved behind the screen, not stirred, but hidden, tugged at her curiosity. As she pulled it slightly into the light, her breath caught. Embroidered in faded gold thread across velvet was a symbol she recognized instantly, a crown encircled by laurel. And beneath it, Elizabeth Regina II. Her hands began to tremble. Carefully, almost reverently, she drew the zipper down an inch. A glimmer of crimson velvet appeared, thick, weighty, cascading like a royal theater curtain. Gold-stitched oak leaves shimmered thinly under the chandelier's glow. Elsie froze. She had seen that fabric bare, but only in photographs of Queen Elizabeth. Coronation in 1953. The robe had been considered priceless. Its location long-lasting to be within the Royal Collection archives. My family knew nothing about osteoporosis. The local GP was kind, and yet here it was, hidden in the private wardrobe of the Queen Consort, marked for the next day's appearance. She zipped the bag shut, her guilt and duty wrestled inside her. Finally, she lifted the garment onto the ottoman where it couldn't be ignored, and stepped into the corridor. Her voice shook as she made a call few in her position would dare to make. Royal Collection Office. This is Elsie Grafton at Clarence House. I need to report something. There's a garment here with the second markings. Crimson velvet, gold embroidery, scheduled for tomorrow. Within 20 minutes, an encrypted alert flashed on a secured console deep inside Windsor Castle. By dawn, the report had reached Princess Anne's aide, and a sealed message was delivered directly to Wellington Barracks, addressed to Sergeant Ian Merrick. The contents were brief, but serious: possible unauthorized possession of state regalia, immediate verification route. Because what had been found in thought silent. Dressing room wasn't just a costume meant for display or a carefully made replica to honor the past. And the partnerships and the learning providers across England helped to generate and promote it. Wasn't even a tribute design to bring up nostalgia or continuity. What lay there hidden behind polished doors and layers of secrecy? Was the original coronation robe of Queen Elizabeth II, the very one she wore at Westminster Abbey in 1953, beneath the golden crown for the eyes of a nation. Every thread of crimson velvet, every gold oak leaf stitched into its folds carried through it of history itself. And yet somehow, against every royal protocol and preservation rule, someone had quietly arranged for that sacred garmento be brought out again, not for remembrance, but for reuse. A royal relic resurrected without permission, waiting to be worn once more. So, Hoha dared to plan the impossible, to resurrect Elizabeth's crown through Robe, and for what hidden purpose before dawn? Stay tuned. The summons before dawn. Sergeant Ian Merrick had long believed that nothing good came from Aknok before sunrise. The rhythm of fearly duty was strict but predictable, and surprises rarely carried pleasant news. On this particular morning, at precisely 4:52 a.m., he had just placed his kettle on stove inside his modest room at Wellington Barracks. The soft whistle off steam was a comfort he relied on before another day of routine work. That comfort vanished the moment 3 sharp knocks echoed against his door. This was not a casual visitor, nor a misplaced livery. The knock had weight, official, deliberate, leaving no space for hesitation. When Merrick opened Theodore, the corridor was dim. But standing bare him was a royal liaison officer, posture rigid, face unreadable. No words were exchanged. The officer held out a sealed envelope of thick parchment, its edges pressed in red wax, the crest faint but unmistakable. He passed it over with a curt nod, then turned and walked away, his footsteps fading quickly into silence. Merrick looked down at the envelope. The black letters in the front were stark and unsettling. Immediate, eyes only. His gut tightened in 8 years working in heritage security. He had handled delicate cases involving misfiled paintings, suspicious liquid artifacts, and even intercepted royal heirlooms intended for discreet auctions. But never had he received something marked with this degree of urgency at this hour, with no explanation. Breaking the wax, unfolded to sheets. The first waist-typed, clipped in tone, and factual a ceremonial item bearing the E.R. the second. Insignia was identified at Clarence House at 2,200 hours. Item matches description from Coronation archives. No transfer logged. No authorization confirmed. Event scheduled in under 12 hours. Immediate verification required. The second pag was different, shorter, handwritten, and chillingly direct. Sergeant Merrick Therob must never be displayed again. Above all, not altered or repurposed. Confirm it once. Secure it, do not fail. There was no signature, but Merrick didn't need one. The script, firm and unmistakable, belonged to Princess Anne, a woman known for her directness. She never wasted ink on trivialities. If she was sending such a note before dawn, it means something of immense historic weight was at risk. This wasn't a bout pressure. It was about safeguarding the legacy of the crown itself. Merrick's training took over. He folded the note with care, slid it into his breast pocket, and began to prepare. Within 5 minutes, the kettle lay forgotten, and was dressed not in the ceremonial scarlet uniform that would draw in Tanyan, but in the muted gray attire of the internal security liaison corps. It was a uniform that allowed him to move among palace staff without raising alarms, to be invisible in plain sight. From his locker, he retrieved a slimmer civil case, its lining acid-free and temperature-controlled. Designed for artifacts too fragile or valuable to overtouch with bare hands. He locked it shut and tucked it under his arm. By 6:10 a.m., he was seated in the back of an unmarked Land Rover Defender. The city still wrapped in silence as it carried him toward Clarence House. London streets, usually bustling, felt hollow and watchful. Street lamps flicker against damp pavement. the air heavy with the kind of stillness that comes before a storms. To anyone glancing through the windows, Merrick would appear to be just another technician, perhaps sent ahead for staging work before the day's press event. But beneath the quiet exterior, his purpose was far more serious. He went heading there to prepare for an event. He was heading there to stop one. Because if the report was true, Samoanian tone to take Queen Elizabeth II's coronation robe, a garment woven into the very story of Britain's monarchy, and reintroduce it to the public in a way it was never meant to be seen again. But what secret could possibly be powerful enough to turn a royal? Showcasing a silent war over the Queen's sacred past. Keep watching. The clash inside Clarence House. The iron gates of Clarence House opened in silence, their slow swing matching the cold precision of the morning. Sergeant Ian Merrick stepped out of the unmarked Defender, carrying his slim archival case like it contained something far more significant than papers and tools. His uniform was plain, a modest gray, devoid of metals or red stripes, designed to let him blend in, not stand out. His identification badge was equally remarkable. No crest, no rank, just coded lettering that opened doors without raising questions. The morning staff barely noticed him. To them, he was just another technician in the Blue-off prevent activity. Inside, the halls pulsed with quiet energy. Florists storied through with vases of fresh cut leaves. Press officers wheeled equipment down the corridor, and aides darted between rooms with clipboards and coffee cups. The air carried a mix of perfume, polish, and the faint hum of nerves that always preceded a royal appearance. Enter Charles III. Accompanied by Queen Consort, Camilla was scheduled to appear at St. James's Palace later that morning. Every flower, every fold of fabric, every camera angle had to be perfect. But Merrick wasn't there for the press. His purpose was sharper, urgent, tone sure that what was hidden inside on a particular wardrobe never saw the light of day. He moved through the corridors with practiced calm. In heritage security, the secret was never to rush. Walk too fast and people ask questions. Walk too slow and they start remembering faces. Confidence, quiet, understated confidence was the armor of his trade. Avalette held open the door to the South Wing dressing hall. Steamer crate? He asked, eyeing Merrick's case. Yes, Merrick replied evenly. The valet pointed toward the far end. Lady Ashcroft's finishing up in the suite. Be quick, they're setting up the displacement quince soon. Merrick nodded once and moved on. The deeper he walked into Camilla's private wing, the softer the carpet became, muting his footsteps. Complete. The lighting grew warmer, flickering off antique sconces and floral wallpaper older than he was. Portraits of Queen Victoria and Princess Mary lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow him. Silent witnesses to Anathor, royal secret unfolding. Outside a dressing suite, a valet worked at a rolling steamer, smoothing out wrinkles from silk gowns. Nearby, a mannequin stood tall with a tag that read, Main look, heritage vibes, regal touch. Merrick's jaw tightened. Heritage vibe, he already knew what they were planning to use as that symbol of heritage. And it wasn't meant to leave the archives. He knocked once, then entered. The room was large and immaculately arranged. Thier, carrying faint notes of lavender and cedarwood. Half-packed suitcases sat upin on velvet chaises. A grand cherrywood wardrobe dominated the far wall, its polished surface reflecting light like glass. This wasn't a simple retrieval anymore. It was a confrontation between history and presentation, preservation and image. At the dressing table stood Lady Ashcroft, sorting accessories with swift precision. She looked up, startled. "You're not from wardrobe?" she said sharply. "Sergeant Merrick, Royal Collection and Heritage Security," he replied. Setting down his case, "They see it as the prince and his great love affair. And you know it's kind of upset," here to verify the wardrobe contents. Her eyes narrowed. Who sent you? Before could answer, Queen Camilla entered holding a porcelain coffee cup. Her tone was measured, almost cold. Do you have a warrant? She asked. Or are we simply ignoring privacy today? Ma'am, Merrick began carefully. Under the 1998 Heritage Protection Act, I'm authorized to inspect royal artifacts if there is reason to believe they've been removed or scheduled for private display. Camilla axled sharply, waving her hand dismissively. Everything here is prepared for a public event. Are you accusing me of theft, Sergeant? I'm not accusing anyone, he said firmly. But certain items are never meant for private use, not even ceremonial reuse. The majority thought that they would never hear of Camilla Parker Bowles again. And yet, this was Charles's one true love, her lawyer. Standing near the wardrobe, interjected quickly. This isn't protocol, Sergeant. Such matters go through household security first. I've reviewed all approvals myself. Merrick didn't flinch. This won't take long. Camilla folded her arms. I have a press event in 3 hours. Why this sudden urgency? Merrick met her gaze. Because what's behind this door was never meant for public view. He turned to ward through her robe and reached for the brass handles. The air in the room seemed to tighten. Even the florists in the next room had gone quiet. Slowly, he opened net doors. Rows of gowns shimmered under soft light, custom designer pieces neatly arranged by season and event. But that wasn't what he was looking for. He crouched low, scanning the shelves until his eyes caught a heavy garment bag, its surface coated in dust. Embroidered funnily at the top were the letters E.R. II. Merrick unzipped it carefully. The scent of aged cedar rosento, the air as the fabric revealed itself, crimson velvet. Thick and luminous, edged with gold-threaded oak leaves. For a moment, no one moved. Lady Ashcroft's clipboard slipped from her hand, landing with a hollow clap. Delaware took a step back. Merrick knew immediately what he was holding: the Coronation robe of Queen Elizabeth II. Worn at Westminster Abbey in 1953, as a card symbol of monarchy and continuity. Camilla stepped forward, her expression unreadable. It was meant as attribute, she said softly. A link between eras, not disrespect. Merrick's voice remained steady. A simple ma'am doesn't outrank the sanctity of royal property. He pulled out his scanner, logged the inventory code, and tapped hold authorization. A soft electronic beep confirmed it. The Robe, now officially frozen from movement, in that quiet, tension-filled room, a line had been drawn between remembrance and misuse. History had just been pulled back from the edge of spectacle. And what secret vow was buried within that royal fabric? And why did its silent tray-torn feel like history's quiet rebellion? Stay glued. The robe that time remembered. Sergeant Ian Merrick spread a protective sheet over the chaise, every motion deliberate as though the moment demanded reverence. With measured care, he lifted the garment from its aged bag, the weight pressing into his arms. Not only from its layers of velvet and silk, but from what it represented. This was no mere robe. It was a relic of 1953, the year a young Elizabeth walked into Westminster Abbey and emerged as queen while an entire nation held its breath. The crimson velvet shimmered in the soft morning light. Rich and solemn, we have seen heartwarming stories of people coming together to help others, its gold embroidery glinting like captured sunlight. Oak leaves ran along hem in perfect symmetry, while woven blooms, England's 3 lions, Scotland's rampant lion, and Ireland's golden harp seemed frozen in time. For 70 years, the silk lining had guarded them from decay, preserving their majesty as though untouched by history. Merrick leaned closer, eyes narrowing on a faded tag stitched into the collar, though the ink was faint and the thread worn. The words were unmistakable. Hartnell, Coronation Commission, 1953. Royal number 4, his breath caught. There could be no doubt. This was the original coronation robe of Queen Elizabeth II. Behind him, Lady Ashcroft's voice trembled through the silence. "Dear God," she whispered, eyes wide, clipboard forked at her side. "That's the actual loan." Camilla stood rigid, her hands clasped, her tone calm but defensive. "I wasn't planning to display it in London," she said carefully. "It stays here, on Lee photographs, a symbolic gesture. That them is continuity." Merrick set Therab gently down, logging the discovery in tow his tablet. His reply was quiet but unyielding. "Continuity doesn't mean possession, ma'am. History isn't something you wear. Camilla's composo. So history should stay locked away, forgotten?" she asked, her voice growing sharper. "This robe isn't Ehrlich collecting dust. It's a bridge bet ween eras. It reminds people that Windor, that this family endures. My advisor said it would give P.O. Plurassurance, a sense of stability, and I believed them. I still do." She hesitated, softer now. "It's beautiful. It carries meaning." Merrick looked up, his tone cutting through the air like steel. "It carries meaning, yes, but to wear it now would say that Elizabeth's crown, Hermamont, belongs to someone else. That isn't stability. That's revision." The silence that followed was thick and lunacy. Camilla's eyes met his, flashing with both defiance and doubt. "And like each one of you here, she loved Eto. Right? For a decade, she wrote poems." "I suppose you've already decided I'm not worthy of it," she said bitterly. Merrick didn't answer. He turned to his tablet, entered item code, and waited. The screen flashed green restricted heritage item, Class 1, Custodial Authority. Royal Vault, Windsor, display status prohibited. Hold confirmed. He placed device beside the robe and spoke quietly. "This wasn't my choice, ma'am. It was decided 70 years ago, the day she wore it. My job is to make sure it stays where it belongs." Between them, the robe glowed faintly in the light, heavy with memory, power, and silence. History had spoken, and its weight was UNMOVABL. So, how did a single robe locked away for 70 years become the silent battleground between loyalty, legacy, and forbidden power? Stay with us. The keeper of the Queen's legacy. The knock was soft 3 steady taps against the dressing suite door. Not rushed, not ceremonial, deliberate. When it opened, Princess Anne entered alone, carrying a thin red folder pressed beneath her arm. The room fell silent. No aides, no cameras, no guards, only the unmistakable weight of her presence. Therese moved slowly across the space. The grand wardrobe stood open, garments distered, and upon the chaise lay the coronation robe of Queen Elizabeth II, crimson velvet trimmed with gold, glowing faintly beneath the morning light. Nearby, Sergeant Ian Merrick stood motionless, posture rigid, awaiting her command. "Sergeant," she said quietly. "Ma'am," Merrick replied. Anne placed the folder on the table and withdrew a load laminated document. Her mother's handwriting, unmistakable and resolute, filled the page coronation robe, state velvet. Designated item number 0004 to remain in the royal archives after ceremony. Not to be displayed or worn, signed Elizabeth. When Anne looked up, her expression was calm but sharp. "Did this go through the royal collection?" she asked. Camilla met her gaze evenly, though her tone carried restraint. "My advisors thought it would be fitting." Anne's eyes hardened. "This isn't about fitting. It's about trust. And that cannot be bent to convenience." Welsh-mounted pony. "And I remember there was a very large horseshoe next door to us, called Ditching Horseshoe." Camilla's voice softened. There were not plans for photographs. It was only a discussion about continuity, about the ignoring the past. Anne shook her head slightly. "You don't honor history by arranging it," You honor it by protecting it. That robe was worn on CB, one woman on a day that changed the world. It's not a costume to bear proposed. The room grew still, tension settling thick as dust. Camilla spoke again, quieter now. People need reassurance, Anne. They need symbols of stability. Anne stepped closer to Therab, her tone low and firm. Reassurance doesn't come from rewriting what was a card, or what suits your role, not what shaped hers. Then with a hesitation, she turned to Merrick. Packet. No further discussion. Merrick obeyed silently. He laid a protective sheet over the chaise and lifted the robe with reverence, folding its weighty velvet etho touching history itself. When the clasp of the case locked shut, the sound felt final. This item is now permanently secure, he said. Camilla gave a small, unreadable nod. Merrick lifted the sealed case and walked out, passing a young staffer with morning tea. She smiled politely, unaware that within his hands lay the most sacred garment in royal history. Outside the courtyard, behind Clarence's house, was calm ivy-covered walls. A breath of cold morning air and silence unbroken by priest or passerby. Merrick crossed Tuth-waiting Royal Collection van, its biometric locks glowing faintly. Behind him, he heard a door click. Camilla stood in the steps, arms folded tightly. Watching, he went through different phases, as occled by loving this, or that their eyes met just long enough to acknowledge what had changed. A line had been drawn, and both knew it would not fade, and approached quietly as the van sealed its doors. You did the right thing, Sergeant, she said. Merrick watched as the vehicle drove away, carrying not just fabric, but the weight of a legacy preserved. In that moment, he understood not all victories make a noise. Some are silent, but they protect the very thing that truly matters. But what if that silent victory was only the beginning, and history itself was preparing to challenge who truly owns crown? The morning the legacy was sealed, Sergeant Merrick carried the sealed case toward the door with slow, deliberate steps, not of hesitation, but of conviction. Every footfall seemed to show the finality of what had just been decided. The coronation robe of Queen Elizabeth II would never again see public light. Never again be photographed or displayed, and certain line vor be worn by anyone else. What left Clarence's house that morning was Morathon royal fabric. It was a piece of history being quietly locked away to preserve its sanctity. As Merrick walked down the long corridor, a young staffer rappered, balancing a tray of morning tea. She stepped aside politely, flashing an uncertain smile. Likely assuming he was just another technician heading out after an overnight job. She had no idea that within that plain, temperature-controlled case lay on off the most sacred garments in Britain's royal legacy. And that was precisely how Merrick preferred it. The fewer Wanu, the safer the truth remained. The back courtyard of Clarence's house was cloaked in calm. Morning light spilled softly across the ivy-covered walls, glinting off damp stone. The air carried that crisp, expectant stillness only found before the city fully wakes. It was a hidden pocket of privacy, shielded from the restless press waiting at the front gates. The royal transport van waited in silence, its climate control humming faintly, biometric locks glowing a steady green. Merrick crossed the courtyard with the steadiness of Amen, carrying a flag to sacred ground behind him. A faint click of a door broke the stillness. He didn't turn immediately. He didn't need to. When Heffanali glanced back, Camilla stood alone in the steps, no coat to shield her from the morning chill. No attendants shivering nearby, just her arms folded tightly across her waist, her face unreadable. For 3 brief seconds, their eyes met. No words were exchanged, no nods, no gestures, just the silent recognition that something irreversible had happened. A line drawn, crossed, and redrawn in permanent ink. At the van, the driver stepped down and opened their enforced chamber. The compartment could have housed crown jewels or nuclear codes. It was built for things that could not be lost. Merrick Placid's case inside, scanned his ID, and waited as 2 green lights confirmed the transfer. The robe was officially in royal custody. Sergeant Merrick, the voice came from behind. Princess Anua's walking toward him. Having Aravetto noticed in a second vehicle, no guards, no entourage, only her quiet authority. Her tone was calm, her words few, but firm. You held the line when it mattered. For a moment, Merrick simply looked at her. There was no triumph in her expression, only resolve. She had stopped what would have turned Herita Gento's spectacle, a sacred moment, into a staged photograph. A faint hint of a smile crossed her face. Some moments, she said softly, can only happen once. Beyond the gates. The sound of Camara shutters snapped through the still arrows. Photographers tried to capture images of Camilla's departing convo.